My name is Whitney, and I'm your instructor for Grace's free Toefl test prep for you. If you're tuning in with us on the Pacific Coast, then I can say to you good morning. Many of you, though, are going to be tuning in another time during a rebroadcasted time, and wherever it is, I want you to know that I'm thrilled to have you join us again for this time. Hopefully, that's going to be beneficial to you and will help enhance your preparation for this test, which is so important to your future plans that you have for your life. Everyone here involved in our program, we have different things that we discuss regarding what's necessary. Next, please. Involved in your preparation, there are some standard topics that always come up, but what's been happening on our various platforms is some questions have been coming up that we would like to address. Next, please. In addressing these, I have in the past talked directly to those of you who have been posting. However, some of these questions actually apply to everybody. So I thought it was a good idea to answer those questions, but do it in a community forum, a wider audience, because others of you might also benefit from the answers, the solutions that perhaps other people are finding. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Next, please. Before I get into that content, however, I want to go over something that is a reminder to you. Perhaps some of you have actually logged into our community after we initially started. And since we do have a rolling admission, an open enrollment on this class, I want to make sure that you don't miss out on some key information that might have been conveyed before you became a member of our community. One of those issues is we have some rules of engagement in our community. Everyone involved in this project here, we are volunteers. We're doing this because we want to invest into our community, whether it's geographically or whether it's into our virtual online community, in a way that is beneficial to you, not in a way that benefits us in any financial way at all. Everyone here, myself in front of the camera, everyone on the team in terms of production, everyone involved in management, we're involved in this as volunteers. And that's our standard. And so we make sure that that standard is maintained also in the communications that occur on our various platforms. What you see on your screen is actually a screenshot that I took on my camera before this post was deleted. And it's similar to some that we've seen in the past. And it's not my intention to offend, because the person who posted this might not have been aware that we have a rule of engagement of no financial benefit involved in communicating with each other. This is not a place where we allow someone to promote products or services for a fee to our students. I think that this example of one might give you pause. You might have looked at it, you might have seen it, but it's not something that we here in our organization have endorsed, and so therefore it was removed. Sometimes people will post things, and we do have screens on our various platforms that allow us to review them on the administrative level to see if there is this financial component connected to it. Again, if there are some of you who have attempted to post something like this and you weren't aware that this is our rule, that this is our standard, it was not my intention to offend in any way. However, the standard remains unchanged. Financial considerations are not a part of this forum. Those of you who are involved in this test, you're already investing a great deal of money and time and resources as a result of the goals that you have. And we think it's prudent to be as cost efficient and cost effective in what you're willing to invest in this process. Make sense? All right, so again, if you're posting something that has a financial connection to it, I want to let you know ahead of time. We will be deleting it from our viewing population. There have been a couple of situations where we actually have blocked participation, because it was more than just simply a promotional post. There was actually a predatory aspect to it, and we want to protect your identities, your participation. So we're needing to be responsible for that. So I just wanted to let you know. Okay, next, please. Now, the content today is actually based on this post that was on one of our WhatsApp groups. I blurred out some information that refers to the specific people who were involved in communicating on it, and that's really not necessary. The person who did this post, they didn't give their name, so I assume that person didn't feel like it was necessary, or perhaps even wanted to remain anonymous as part of their preparation. However, the question I thought was very relevant to everybody involved in our community. Here is what it says. Good morning. I'm just starting following the course. I have few questions if someone can answer me. Shall I download the Toefl app first and then follow the lessons on Grace Toefl page? Also, further down, there was another question in the similar vein. Good evening. I'm looking for a good sources for studying Toefl IBT. So these questions, I will let you know, as a native speaker of English, I read these and I recognize some characteristics of the writing that demonstrate that these are not native speakers who wrote this, which is completely appropriate. These are questions, and I don't want you to feel shy about asking questions, but I see that these people want to learn English. Now, interestingly, previously in the post that I showed you that I deleted and did not include in the public forum, that post, which was trying to sell you services on how to improve your English to succeed on this test, that post actually had some of the same types of grammatical errors that would let me know that they are not a native speaker. Why would you spend money if someone doesn't have the native capacity of English to be able to help promote your skills, right? So anyway, wanted to point that out. So on this though, this is just a two standard appropriate questions, which I thought could guide us in the work that we're doing. Next, please. This post I thought was interesting because it refers back to one of the first classes that we had when we were all new together, and that's been a few months now, I guess, and we were trying to get an understanding of the landscape, and some of you were just beginning your process of preparation. As a reminder of that, to prepare for the Toefl, the developer of the assessment, ETS, recommends that you begin a minimum of 2 months before you're going to be taking the test, and that test occur a minimum of 3 months before it actually needs to be received by the institution or the professional organization who will be evaluating your request for admission, right? So we're talking a 6-month timeline is a minimum that is recommended by those who built this test. So we're a couple of months into that. Some of you have actually already taken the test in the time that we've been involved in our conversation, but that's simply because of the timing of what was necessary for your schedule and when we started our release, So now though, there are some of you who are newly stepping into our community and you missed perhaps the first broadcast, and so therefore some of the initial foundational information you weren't exposed to. Perhaps you didn't realize that there were previous broadcasts that are archived on our channel on Facebook, our channel on YouTube or on our Facebook that you can go back and review, that even include English captions later on. So anyway, this though goes back to, again, the very beginning. What I have here is a screenshot of the Toefl Go official application developed by ETS. This is the initial screen that you'll pull up, and what happens is the bubbles that say free sample test, practice test library, official tips, those float around, and you can click on those and go directly to those sections, which is what we did in the initial course, the initial broadcast rather. But what I want to do today is I want to go deeper into this application. As a result, hopefully you'll get a better sense of various preparation tools that are free to you, that I strongly encourage that you participate in. The reason is these tools were developed by ETS, who are the builders of the test, right? They have a vested interest in your success, because if their test, number one, doesn't have a population that is successful with appropriate workmanlike diligence in terms of preparation, then they will lose over time the opportunity to give the test, because there are other tests available and others will choose a different test instead of theirs. Plus, their tests must be an accurate statistical predictor of your probability of success, whether it's in higher education or whether it's in your professional organization or professional activities in English, right? So here is what I want to do. On this screen, on the upper left-hand corner, you see the bars that show you a pull-down menu. We didn't do this the first time around, but I want to do that today in our class. Next, please. If you click on that pull-down menu, this is what you get. This is much more in-depth. It's not just the floating bubbles that you can click for easy access. This gives you the entire register of all the various services that are available in this application for your phones. Next, please. So if we begin to peruse these, one of them is the library. This shows just a clip. You can scroll down on these and there are a number of different resources available in the library online. I again want to emphasize, work on all the free ones first, because once you've completely exhausted those and feel almost bored because you're so confident in your performance on those free resources, then you can investigate going into more of an investment of money in the other resources. But the free ones, there are so many of them, you might get all you need just from those. Next, please. So this is, again, the library. Also, there is a skill sample test that's free available to this too. And it gives you, I think, a bit of a good look and feel of sitting for the internet-based version of the test. What this does here is, if you look at this part of the application and you click on it, it will take you into a minimized size of test that includes actual Toefl test questions, and you can then test yourself. You have an unlimited number of times that you can use this test. So these test questions in this have actually been retired, but they did occur on previous versions of the test. Next, please. If you click this and where it says go, then what will happen is it'll take you to the screens and show you how to begin to sit for this test in the comfort of your home. And it gives you some specific instructions. It says that you can pause or exit by hitting certain buttons. You can start all over by hitting the reset. Now, what's interesting is they do recommend, though, if you hit pause to stop, or the exit button to stop, or you hit the reset to start all over and erase your answers and begin again, that's not going to give you an accurate look and feel of what it will be like to sit for this test. When you come to a point that you're able to go through this without hitting the pause or the exit or the reset button, then that'll give you, again, the most accurate look and feel sense of what it's like to take the test. However, you're probably taking this at home, and you might have children, or you might have phone calls regarding a client, or you might need to go and pick up your kids at school, or your dog gets in a fight. There's many different things in our regular lives that can interfere with sitting for the test. So again, those functions are available to you on this sample. Next, please. And so the general test information, it'll just give you how to do it. It says your performance on this practice test is not a predictor of how you might perform on the actual Toefl internet-based test. Now let me describe what that means. That disclaimer does not mean that doing this practice test on the application is not a good idea. It's a very good idea. But ETS has a strong scientific, statistical component to all of their activities. And the word that's used here is your performance on this practice test is not a predictor of how you might perform on the actual test. It doesn't, if you're going to be stepping in and out of the test, they can't say statistically that this is exactly how well you will do, because it's a practice only. Just like those of you who play sports, you can practice and you can give yourself a sense of it, but it's not going to necessarily be an actual indicator, a predictor, a statistical correlation and direct connection of how well you do, because of the ambient variables that are going to affect the performance graph for you, right? So they need to make sure that they give you that disclaimer, because they are very accurate statistically, and statistically they are conservative, and they will not make a promise of a sound statistical connection unless there is one. All right, so, but there still is value in doing it, and I recommend it strongly. Okay, next please. Another thing that is on this pull down menu is who ETS is, why the TOEFL test, how do you prepare. This is a good, I thought, clear information that can help give you a foundation of what needs to happen. Next please. If you click on it, it says who is ETS. I think that's actually important. ETS is the maker of TOEFL, and they are a nonprofit organization. And this, when it says we, I took this directly from ETS's application. So this is their proprietary content from them. That's why they use the pronoun we. I am not ETS. Grace, we are not ETS. We're giving you an orientation and preparation for ETS's test that they built. What I did here is I took their content off their app. That's why the pronoun we is being used. I want to emphasize that. Okay, it is a nonprofit organization. They have more than 60 years of experience, and their goal is to administer tests that give you the opportunity to pursue your dreams anywhere in the world. The TOEFL is not the only test that ETS has. They have probably dozens of tests, if not even more. One of the other famous tests that ETS has is the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test. They are the same organization that does the SAT, which your kids are probably going to be taking, that, or the ACT, which is a different organization. But they'll be taking oftentimes the SAT before they want to get into a college. And different colleges and universities, they require certain SAT scores for admission. TOEFL is like that. And it's developed by the same organization who developed and owns the SAT, as well as other assessments, including workforce development assessments. Okay, next please. Then this is just some information for you. Again, TOEFL is one of the tests. I know they're nonprofit, but I need to say there is a market for this kind of tests. And their test is actually a product in the market. And there are other tests that you can choose. And so where you're going to want to go, look and see what is their preference if you want to go to higher education. Or in your professional organization where you're looking for reciprocal certification, find out what is their preference. And you might perform actually better on a different test instead of TOEFL. It just really depends on the person, all right? But these are the strengths that ETS describes connected to this particular assessment. It is the most, they say that's the most respected English language assessment in the world. Other nonprofit organizations who also developed assessments might debate that. There are some assessments that came out of England as instead of the United States, and sometimes people in England say that we don't even speak English in America. They'll say we speak American. So they are the masters of the language. So it just depends, but ETS would say that it's the most respected language assessment in the world. There are more than 9,000 universities and agencies and institutions in over 130 countries that accept it, including Australia, Canada, the UK, and the United States. There are more than 30 million students around the world who have taken it, correct? I'm actually not sure if that refers to multiple testings. I think actually it refers to individual students. Sometimes you'll have individual students take it multiple times. I'd love it if you didn't have to take it multiple times, because each time you do that, it costs you money, and I'm concerned about that. But I know one gentleman who took it, I believe, 17 times, finally got what he needed. A couple of classes ago, we had an on-camera interview with a student who took it twice and then therefore received the score she needed and then was able to proceed forward. So it depends. But I believe it is 30 million individual students, not 30 million times the test has been taken, all right? 90% of the TOEFL test takers get into their first or their second choice of university, which is good. And this test measures English language proficiency. And we know that. So, all right, next please. So those are the things that ETS wants you to know about this test. This is a pull down menu. Many times when you're on this application, make sure that you use the scroll feature on your phone, because there are pull down menus on all of these screens. And this is actually the second part of that same initial screen about did you know this about the TOEFL. What I wanted you to do on this is I pulled it all the way down on this screenshot because I wanted you to see that there are a number of different links where you can click to additional services or information as you go through this application, this app on your phone. And on this one, the very last part of the paragraph has an additional link where it says you can use the TOEFL destination search to search for the institutions which accept your scores. That's really important because if you want to go to a particular place and they don't accept TOEFL, which would be rare, you need to know that. You don't want to sit for it and go through the rigmarole if that's not going to benefit you. Also, frankly, some places don't require it. And if that's the case, you don't want to take it if you don't have to, right? I suppose. So that link there can assist you with finding out, making sure there's a good fit to going through this process to what you want to do. All right? Next, please. Reminder, as I said earlier, ETS recommends you start preparing at least 8 weeks before your test date, and that you take the test at least 2 to 3 months before your earliest school application date. So some of you are perhaps even applying for early admission decisions like in December for next academic year, in which case you want to count back, say 3 months from that, and then count back 2 months from that to look at your testing date. And that gives you a window of about 5 to even 6 months of preparation before you're going to sit for the test because of the application, right? Okay. Now, there are additional sources of assistance that are described for you on the application. One of them are journey emails. So if you're not comfortable with using a cell phone, if you're more comfortable with an email-based communication, then there is a service that will help you. Those are the Journey email newsletter network that is supported and developed by ETS. So get onto that email list to be able to get information that will help you. There's also other test prep essentials. There's the website they have. There's also a Go Anywhere website, and so that will include information regarding visas, studying abroad, and resources, which can be very helpful. I have noticed sometimes when you're looking at studying in another institution in another country, a lot of the absolutely essential information you need is not in your language. And I know that you're going to be learning English as you go, but in those initial critical information moments, it's great to have extra help on getting visas, studying abroad, etc. As you know, I'm married to a gentleman who's Italian, and I'm in the process of doing some paperwork with the Italian consulate here in Southern California. And I don't yet know enough Italian to make it super easy. I will in the future. This is my pledge. But at the moment, as I go through their application materials, I am not as proficient as I shall be and as I actually need to be, but that's, again, part of my plan. But a number of the materials are only in Italian, including a lot of the Italian language class resources they have. The promotional materials are just in Italian, which there's a catch-22 for me, as we say. So, again, another resource there. Additionally, we have, again, that Go Anywhere. There's also a blog that you can go on and read just real life events, real life tips that people go through, which I think is very important. In terms of one of the most powerful methods in human learning is actually modeling. So you look at a person, hear what they did, and you can imagine yourself making decisions to emulate successful behavior. It's a very powerful form of human learning. It accelerates your acquisition. And there's also a Toefl test, our Toefl test page on Facebook, an official one that you can go on. All right? Next, please. And by the way, on their official page, they'll proctor that like we do on ours. They'll look through and make sure that posts are official, and if they're not, if there's someone marketing to you, they'll delete. They'll do the same thing that we do on ours. All right. Additionally, again, this describes how the Toefl is put together for your information. You know, there's reading and listening sections based on the number of questions that are answered correctly. That's what your score is. But then the speaking and writing sections, they have scoring rubrics or scoring guides. And on this, when you go into the application, you'll see that it also is a hyperlink that you can click to. And what it does, it'll bring up a Google Doc that actually shows you the rubrics, which are very information dense, and they're not, you can't acquire everything you need on one reading. So it might be nice actually to click on that, and they'll bring up it's a sheet that has like 2 pages, or for the rubrics for the speaking, 2 pages for the writing. One is for integrated, one is independent, etc., etc. You might want to print those so that you can read them and just meditate on that information so you really know how you're going to get your score. All right, but that is where you can find a link to that on the app. Next, please. And it describes how things are scored, goes into more information about that. Then it talks about the process of receiving your scores, how they're posted on the website within 10 days after the test. Within 3 days after your scores are posted, you can download a PDF copy of your score report, but then official reports are mailed directly to your institution, and many institutions require that your hands don't touch that report. So even if you print out a PDF, which theoretically you're not obviously going to be able to edit, the institution themselves will require an official one that is mailed directly from ETS. There is a clean, direct method of communication between institutions as well as ETS. They handle the reporting for that on you. Okay, next please. Then again, your scores are posted within 10 days after the test date. We went over that. And then down, again, you can get a printed score. Next, please. And then, let's see, moving on. Okay. There are many different times when you can take the Toefl test throughout the year. There's 50 different times. So if you miss one particular test date, if you have accurately given yourself a long enough timeline to be able to take the test before your deadlines are going to be coming upon you, then you have an opportunity, if you don't feel prepared or something happens in your family, to take the test on a different date. And that's important because people will spend the money to get the test and then maybe something occurs. And I believe it's within 4 days, 4 business days, you can get some portion of a refund back on your testing. But if it's before that, if you just decide I can't do it, and it's earlier than that, closer to the test date, you don't get your money back. And I want to save you guys money. All right, so anyway, 50 different times when you can take the test throughout the year. There are a list of test dates here and test centers. Also, if you require special accommodations, these are all hyperlinks included on the application. You can click to access those additional services. All right, next please. Then this is a new section. These are various tips, and we actually went over all of these in the first class, and I encourage you to click on each of these. These are amalgamated tips on the various sections that will help assist you in acquiring your language in a more rapid way. So, but I just encourage you just to meander through these various sections. Click on the reading, listening, speaking, writing section, and then just begin to read through. And again, make sure you scroll down because all of these sections, the content is quite deep, and so you can go quite a ways on your phone. Just continue to scroll down. You'll be able to get what you need. Next, please. Then this is another section that describes the scoring section, specifically general information, then gives you samples as well. Next, please. This is, let's see, again, general information. And what I wanted to show you here, emphasizing that you can scroll down, it says, you know, the reading listening section is scored by computer, speaking section is scored by human raters through a centralized scoring network that implements and ensures consistent scoring standards. And it says ETS raters are trained, and it's an incomplete sentence. The reason I put that here is I wanted to remind you, you can scroll down. If you have your cursor there and you're scrolling on that clicked section, there's a lot of content that will give you the information that you need on that. So just as a reminder, make sure to scroll. Next, please. I was referring to you about that rubrics, those rubrics on the two sections, on the speaking and the writing section, and then within those, independent and integrated on both of those, right? This is an example of the rubrics. If you click on those hyperlinks, it pulls up Google Docs that you can print out, PDFs on 8.5 by 11, so you can have it in your hand and be able to just chew on it, meditate on it, really acquire what is the standard necessary to get the score you need, all right? So I wanted to show you those visually. Like I said, it's very dense information. So print it out and use that as part of your acquisition, learning what they're going to be grading you on, right? Next, please. Speaking samples. There's also, on the speaking section, there's actually, it gives you important points. It gives you samples of what someone has actually done and gives you the specific rater comments. So it gives you real world examples of what someone's done to help you again model your performance based on what has been successful historically for someone else. Yeah? Next, please. And again, all of the different sections will, the speaking, writing, listening, they'll all give you that same general information, specific tips, examples of what's actually occurred in the past, and rater comments, or, you know, it's very specific, real world examples of success that you can use on your own study choices. All right. This is another section which I actually wanted to go through with you, which I referred to in a previous class, but I wanted to actually show you how this section works. There are different learning styles, and it doesn't mean that you don't have to adapt your style to whatever environment you're in. I mean, if you're going to college or you have gone to college, you know that there are different types of professors. There's different types of educational environments. Sometimes it's you and the computer. Sometimes there is a dynamic lecturer. Sometimes there's someone who they don't lecture, but they just go up and they just start writing on a chalkboard. And the information there is very important that you acquire to succeed in the class. Sometimes he or she might have written a book. And so for success in the class, you might need to buy their book and read their book and be tested on their book. So there's a number of different ways that information is presented to you. And your brain, through both your natural born capacities or tendencies, as well as through the environment that you've been nurtured in, there are brain patterns that are habits that neurologically you fall into. Doesn't mean that you can't adapt, but there are some things that if you can play to your strengths, then that can help you, especially if you're on a timeline that's closer. It can help you learn more quickly what you need to know to succeed. So what this test does is it shows you what is your studying personality. And I thought it was rather interesting because I did it on myself. And I was reading the questions, and I didn't see necessarily specifically on all of them what was in that question that would forecast what type I was. And the questions that I answered, I would have thought that it would lead to a different conclusion but it nailed me. It got me right on. So I want to show you how this works. So I want you to take this test. And then after, what happens is it also gives you tips for your particular study and learning style. What is your personality style? What you can do to help you acquire more rapidly. Next, please. So this test is a small one. It only has 5 questions to it, so it's not going to overwhelm you with your studying, okay? You're ordering food at a restaurant. How do you choose what to have? These are the choices. You look at the pictures of each dish or look around at what others are eating. You listen to the waiter's or a friend's recommendations. You read the descriptions on the menu, or you order something you've had there before. People who've been with me at a restaurant that I've been to a number of times, they'll know that I typically order something that I've had there before, but not when I first go into a restaurant. If it's a new place, I don't want someone to talk to me necessarily. I want to read the descriptions on the menu. And then, after I've acquired some knowledge, then I'll ask questions, and then I'll listen to what's the special of the day or what is the recommendation of those who work there. But that's my style. I would say that I read the descriptions on the menu first if it's a new environment. I want to step back and acquire before I connect. Yeah? Next, please. Another question. You prefer a professor who uses A, diagrams, charts, and graphs, group discussion and guest speakers, books, handouts, and readings, or field trips, hands-on practical lessons? Me personally, I would say that I prefer books, handouts, and readings. I've been in situations where during a lecture I took some notes, and in the test I thought that I had accurately captured the information that was said in the lecture, and I would not get credit for something. And if it was just a spoken presentation, there was not the accountability that I wanted to have. That's in a bad scenario. So in my past academic experiences, I find that there is greater accountability if I have books, handouts, and readings in front of me, because I can take it to someone, I can say, look, and I can say, this is what I read. And so I can actually have, I can show that I actually was trying to acquire the content. I put in the time diligently, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting the information right. And for me, in that kind of environment or in a professional environment, I like to have something that there's no dispute on. I appreciate presentations. I appreciate conversation and group interactions and discussions, field trips, and that, so you have multi-sensory engagement, and so you acquire in it, sometimes in a very entertaining environment. And so I love all that. I love it all. But what do I prefer? I prefer a book, a handout, or a reading. Yeah, that's me. Next, please. Think of a time when you learned how to use something new, such as a camera or your phone, and you figured it out by A, looking at diagrams and images in the manual or online, B, having the salesperson or a friend demonstrate how to work it, C, reading the instruction manual, or D, playing with it and attempting to try different functions until you knew how to use it. I will confess to you that I tend to just open a box and start playing with it. It's gotten me into trouble in the past. I've tried to put together furniture from IKEA and put things together backwards and had to dismantle and start all over again, and that's completely my fault because I wouldn't read the instruction manual, right? Or I didn't listen to what someone was telling me. I wanted to get my hands on it and start to play. I do the same thing with my cell phone. When I get a new cell phone, I just start to open it and I just start to mess around with it and hit buttons and see what happens, and that's how I learn. I'm tactile in that manner. And then after I get a sense of feeling comfortable with what's happening tactily, then I'll start to read an instruction manual maybe, or I'll talk to someone who I know uses something successfully. That for me works really well. I have a friend, she's the go-to person, her name is Vanessa. She's the go-to person if I want to know how to use any kind of new media apps. She knows them all, and so it makes me look less dumb, which I really appreciate, Vanessa. Merci. So that's what I would do, is I would just start playing with things, and that's my personal style, right? I have actually had cell phones that I have never even opened the manual for. I tend to open a manual when there's something wrong. And then I realize that sometimes the reason something's wrong is it's because of me. But anyway, that's my personality style for studying. Next, please. For a classroom assignment, you would rather be asked to A, submit a research paper complete with visuals and citations, B, give an oral presentation, C, write an essay, or D, demonstrate a skill or act something out. For me personally, I would probably say B, give an oral presentation. I'm more comfortable with, I'm comfortable in my academic environment. I've had exposure to all these various things. But I will say that an oral presentation for me is something that I can do relatively easily. And I know that if I'm doing a research project with visuals and citations, I know that there will be hours and days where I won't be moving. I'll just be at the desk, right? And essays, same thing. Essays are great though. I like to do that too. I like it all. But personally, my preferred style, I would rather be asked to give an oral presentation. Now in grad school, I noticed, I think I told you this in a previous class, it was really interesting because everyone in the grad program that I was in was required to have a management level position as a condition of entry into the program. So I assumed, managers, they're comfortable public speaking, and yet there was a strong contingent of engineers and accountants and statisticians, I would say, and some scientific bent as well population in that group, that cohort I was in, that were very uncomfortable with the oral presentations. And it was surprising to me, but there are those of us in our daily life, in our environments, that don't get that exposure. And so that was interesting to me. So anyway, again, I'm talking about myself in this just to give you a sense of this part of this test is about you. And so the reason I'm talking about myself is I want to give you an understanding of how this little test helped me, and hopefully it will help you as well, be able to develop some strategies for your studying. All right, next please. What do you enjoy the most? Painting, sketching, creating artwork of any kind, listening to music, reading a good book, or playing sports? Me personally, I would say, what do I enjoy? I like B, listening to music. I think I told you a few classes ago, I enjoy listening to the radio. I feel like if I listen to something, then I can free up my hands and my eyeballs to do other things. I can be working on some sort of a task at home. I can be working on an assignment. When I used to study for midterms, I would feel very self-pitying if I was locked in a room away from everybody else. What I would do instead is I would sit myself in the middle of some sort of a social environment, and I would hear the ambient noise, music, televisions, whatever it was, and for some reason that helped me focus and acquire more easily. And I don't know, my little sister, who also has a master's degree, she's the complete opposite. And when she would go to study, she would go up into the second floor, shut the door, and I felt terribly sorry for her. But for me, she was probably feeling sorry for me because I was in the midst of chaos at all times. I don't know, but that was differences of style. So I like to listen to music. Next, please. All right. Now this is what was interesting. My result on these 5 little questions are that I learn best by listening. Now, as I go back and read through the questions, there was only one of them that directly dealt with listening as being, my method of acquisition. As you recall, one of the test questions previously was, what is my preferred style of learning? And it said reading, handouts, etc., or listening to a professor, and I chose reading, right? And yet my preferred style is actually listening according to the test results. And I have to agree with that. I recall during grad school particularly, I would try to be so diligent and take notes of the lectures. And I would find what would happen is, as I would start to write, my auditory perception, I was still listening, but my concentration would kind of tune out, and I would be so careful trying to make sure I took notes the correct way. And I would realize then I had actually missed blocks of information because the professor had gone on. And my writing actually from grad school became horrible because I was trying to write very rapidly, and it's still embarrassingly bad compared to my husband particularly, who writes beautifully. Like, it's amazing. His education was wonderful in Italy, and his penmanship is astounding. Mine is not. Mine is embarrassing. Part of that is because of grad school, because I started trying to write really fast to be able to take the notes from the lecture. It wasn't successful. I found myself, and I was concerned initially about the teachers wondering if I was being slack, not being diligent, because what I would do during the lectures, I'd push my papers up, books, and I would listen. And I would just watch them, and I would just listen. And I found, once in a while there'd be a point, there was a specific, like a date or something technical with a numerical quantity assigned to it. And because it was that type of information, I would jot it down quickly. But otherwise, I would just focus listening to the teachers. And I recalled that. And this small little 5-question subset test actually determined that from the answers that I gave. I thought that was very interesting. So for me, there are different particular strategies that can be used because of my learning style. Same thing for you. You might be one who prefers reading, prefers writing, etc. Yeah? Next, please. Here's some examples of the types of, for me, the types of recommendations that are given because of my results. Listen to online broadcasts. TV shows and movies can help improve my English. The more you listen, the more you will understand vocabulary and expressions, and listen closely to words. I actually have a dear friend, Michel Optica, who, hi Michel, bonjour, ça va? He learned English from watching television. He actually watched the same, my pastor at my church, he actually watched my pastor's broadcasts and learned English just from watching TV. And I actually ended up meeting he and his family through our religious association, our church. And so he actually learned English through watching television. Yeah? So it's possible. So this is one of the recommendations for someone like me, to listen. Yeah? Next, please. Oh, and also, too, I wanted to say back to this, too. My husband and I, he watches Italian news broadcasts. And as he's watching them, I'm like puttering around the house and I'm listening. And he said, "You're not even paying attention," because he wants me to learn Italian. And I had to describe to him that my style is that I listen and I will watch the screen. The captions help. But I will listen, and the context will help me make connections, but the listening to me is very powerful. So it looks like I'm not paying attention because I'm wandering around. I don't know if it's nervous energy or whatever it is, but that's how I learn. It goes in here. Other ways too. I love to read, but I listen a lot, and that for me is very powerful, and I'm encountering that even to this day. Yeah? Here's another recommendation for me. Perhaps you as well. Create your own study group. Find other students who are studying for the test. Choose a place to hold a group, whether it's classroom, home, library, video conferencing, online, etc. And use the Toefl test prep. That's what some of you are doing through our WhatsApp groups or through Facebook or in various organizations and libraries, whatever. For you as well as for me, creating a study group where I can listen to help acquire, that can increase the power of your acquisition. All right? Next, please. And let's see. All right. This I thought was interesting. To improve your speaking, pay attention to your tone. People form an impression of you in about 10 to 20 seconds. An impression is made more often from how we say something than from what we actually say. Now, why is this included in TOEFL preparation? Because the section on speaking, there's going to be a native speaker who's going to be listening to you speak. And there are impressions that are made on your tone which can affect the score. Everyone tries to be as objective as possible on your rating, but there are subjective influences that when you have a human being who's doing this, they're going to touch and color the assessment moment. It's just something that you can't build out of anything. You can minimize it, but it's always going to be there when you have a human rater involved in your scoring. That's why only part of your score is done with a human rater, and the other part is, objective computer analysis, right? So your tone can affect meaning and impression. Let me give you an example. When I was a child, my mother, when we were in trouble, she would say, I beg your pardon, or watch your language, right? And that's all she'd have to say. And we would freeze. We knew we were in trouble. Now, I beg your pardon. If she said that, I knew I was in trouble. Now, here's the same phrase, but said with a different tone. I beg your pardon. In other words, excuse me, right? So in England, if you say that, they think that you're asking, for you to tell them something. So it's an interruption, but it's not a confrontation with your bad behavior, right? But the tone is different. Also, watch your language. When a mother says that, you know you're in trouble. If someone is coaching you, they might say, watch your language. Slightly different tone, different context can give a different impression. So that's something that I want you to be aware of. And when you're listening to native speakers, you will be able to acquire tonal inflections, tonal patterns that you can adapt and adopt, and therefore use those in your language for greater success. Whether it's on this test, or in an academic environment, or communicating in a professional arena, all right? That's very important. Next, please. There, again, are different resources here. There's a Toefl app, there's a channel rather, there's other pull-down opportunities for other resources on the mobile app that I want you to be able to be familiar with. There also is a search aspect that you can finally get to. It's kind of buried deep in the app. But if you go down, you can finally find a search aspect that if you want to type in information and have it just do a general search for you to pull up specific things for you, it can do so. Next, please. Yeah, this is actually where it shows it. On one of the pull-down menus, down here, it says Explore, Practice, Planner, Connect. If you look there on the middle of that screen, there's a site search, and that's the only place I found actually that you can do just a generalized search for specific information to you, all right? So just FYI. Next, please. Homework assignment, all right? I want you to ask me more questions on our WhatsApp group or on our Facebook Grace group page. I want us to be able to respond to those in a community way. Rather than an individual one-on-one, the questions and challenges that you are confronting, others are as well. So if you ask them on those platforms and you allow me to answer them in a public domain, that will allow us all to hopefully accelerate our acquisition and lead to success. All right, so ask me some more questions on those platforms and I'll pull those and use those for content in future classes. All right. Also, as a reminder, which I addressed this a little bit last week, if you or anyone in your household is planning to pursue higher education next year, so fall 2020, right? And you might need financial assistance, whether it's private or federal or whatever it is, but you just simply might need it. You're not sure, but there's a possibility, a remote possibility, but any possibility at all. Get ready to apply on the FAFSA site beginning October 1st of this year for the academic year starting in the fall. If you're looking for early admission decisions in December, you can't say yes to an institution if you don't know if you're getting financial aid or in process. So go for that October 1st application date. Get your documents ready to apply, because again, it is first come, first serve, and they run out of money every single year. So you don't want to get a letter that says, congratulations, you're eligible, but we're sorry, we're broke from the government, all right? You want to make sure that you're as close as possible to the front of the line so that if you decide, you will have the opportunity. Now, when I first applied to college, I did the FAFSA in the right time, and I got an award, but my life had changed by the time I started school in that 9-month period, and so I didn't need the entire award that they gave me. I took some of it, and I relinquished the rest of it, so they were able to pool that again and give it to another student. All right, so you don't have to take it, but you can if you want to, if you're in line already. Make sense? All right, next. Our next class will be next Sunday, the 22nd of September, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time until 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I hope things are well with you. I hope things are going well with you. I hope that your frustrations and your fatigue and your preparation is not overwhelming. I hope that there are moments that allow you to be refreshed and encouraged. I hope that you feel like you're making progress, even incremental small steps towards where you want to go. I hope that you feel that we are serving you in that vision that you have. So thank you again for your time today. And on behalf of everyone here, until we see each other again, may peace be with you.